Hey, Natsu here. Today I'm going to start a remake of an old What If that I tried to do at the start of my channel. The sound was way too freaking bad, so I had left the two first parts on for like 3 days and then deleted them. I think there was only like 7 views on it total, counting both parts. So I'm going to redo them, this time with a better audio, and yeah. So this What If is called What If Deku had Time Reaper. This is going to be a quirk that allows him to, well, the abilities that this gives him are, firstly, he will only age up until 14, and then he will stop aging. No matter how long he stays like that, he will not age. His body will have a regen thanks to it. Basically, it's not really a regen, it's more that unless you actually arrive to kill him, which will be pretty hard, because he will literally be classed as death. So he's at 14, he will, well, okay. How it happens is that the quirk he has when he is born is called Time Ripple. It's basically that touching someone, he was able to send them back or send them forward in time. Like, they were staying there, but they were or aging or de-aging from a couple of minutes to a couple of hours, but only that much while he was a kid. So this is how it's going to start, with him being born, later finding out that he has a quirk, then at a certain point actually using it. And the first time he used it is actually after someone basically breaks a small toy, let's say, and he basically uses it to rewind the toy to before it was broken. How, how I explained it to someone is, think of Aries quirk, but that can fast forward, slow down, directly send someone to a previous um, body that they had, or send them further in time, or as well completely stop it if he wants to for someone. So at first he's only able to do up to some hours, and after that he needs to wait a bit because it takes a lot of energy out of him. So people think that would be a great quirk for a hero, a detective, or anything like that, because he can literally break into a place and then rewind it to not be broken. So he breaks a window, he rewinds it, it doesn't even look like he even been there, and stuff like that. Or something like healing people. Someone is hurt, he rewinds them to before they got hurt, they are better. And since they're rewind, and well, they won't get the injury back simply because they can do something different. So compared to Eri, he actually has some control over it and can actually send advance time, uh, fast forward time, slow down time, literally just skip back in time, or stop it completely. So, for now, he's literally only able to do some hours while he's a kid. Over time, he grows up and, well, his quirk grows with him. And Bakugo still think he's one of the best, but he sees Deku actually as pretty close second. Because at some point, if he's able to increase it strong enough, like by age 5, he's actually in dead days, that he can fast forward or go back. So he can pretty much do a great amount of power in that. If he's able to go up to years and stuff like that, basically he would be one of the greatest. Well, he could be literally someone who helped people live longer or stuff like that, thanks to his quirk. Um, he could be a medic and a great hero, stuff like that. And Bakugo just called him the Reaper, the Time Reaper, simply because if he wants to, he can literally take time from someone. So, taking away the time of someone, making them live less than what they should be able to live. And since Bakugo wants to be the best, he basically calls Deku a weakling, but still gave him that name because, yeah, he could. Um, so, basically, for almost all of his life, he trains, he has friends, everything's fine, everything's nice. Um, up until he is on his 14th birthday. I didn't explain to the guy exactly how his body stops aging, but I'm going to explain it right here. On his 14th birthday, his quirk actually takes a turn. Instead of just increasing normally, something happens to Deku. An accident. Um, he is actually outside, basically walking with his mom, and someone basically attacks them. Basically, a villain trying to take Deku hostage. The hero that was following him isn't able to do anything because Deku is taken hostage. And then, after a while, the person that was taking him hostage basically wanted to just hurt Deku, but he used a blade that was extremely sharp and basically poked through his heart. Basically a death sentence if you're not already in a hospital. And even then, you have extremely low chance of surviving. After that happened, basically the hero attacked the villain, knocked him out, tried to see if he could help Deku. The only thing Deku was never able to rewind or fast forward was his own body. This was the only thing he knew he was never able to do. Until in that single moment, something happened to him. He should be having a hard time breathing. He should be coughing blood. Something like that. But he feels fine. Basically, everyone's asking, well, trying to see if he's bleeding, but there's nothing. They look for a pulse on him because where it took him, it should be the heart. And he knows that, but there's no pulse. Deku's body clearly stopped time for himself. And no matter what's happening afterward, his body's basically rewinding it to that moment. But only the physical body, not the quirk or stuff like hair and other stuff like that. Those will keep growing, but his age won't change. He will not age anymore. They bring him to the hospital to see basically what's happening, and they see where the blade got him. They basically say that they're going to try and um, do a surgery to try and arrange it, even though he seemed to be perfectly fine, even without his heart beating. So they go to try and basically put him under, and it doesn't affect him. He's not feeling sleepy. Um, he's not feeling as if he's going to fall asleep. After a while, he basically just one of the people basically tell him, "I'm sorry, this is going to hurt. If we're not able to put you to sleep, we still have to operate." And they start cutting into him. And they do the incision. They let go of it for about 2 or 3 seconds, and they just see the wound close back. The place where there was a hole, basically, through the heart, well, they were just able to see that, basically. There's no hole in the heart. There was a hole in the skin, well, the top of the skin, and there seemed to have been a broken ribcage, but everything was fine under there. That's where there was no blood. His body, the moment he got damaged to a point of being dead, basically activated a capacity that basically makes him, well, undying. As long as a single piece of his body can emit his quirk, his entire body rewinds to just before that damage was taken. He cannot age, he cannot die, unless you're able to actually destroy his entire body. They don't know for the second part, they just think that okay, his body stopped aging and he has a recovery quirk now. Well, looking like that. Sorry. So they basically tell him that they want to test his quirk again. It's probably that something happened during that moment, and his quirk basically works like normal. Except that this time, when he actually uses the... Well, previously he had to absolutely touch people, or whatever it was that he was rewinding, or fast forwarding. Now, he can make a diameter around him that all inside of that is basically controlled by his quirk. Basically, they took, let's say, something like, let's go for a piece of burning wood that basically burned, well, of burnt wood that they said basically burnt the day before. They asked him to use his quirk on it, to rewind it to see if he can actually still do exactly how he was doing it before. But in the moment that he tried to do that, basically he was alone in the room so that nothing would happen to anyone else, but the entire room suddenly had just a bluish glow to it, and Deku used his power. The piece of burnt wood basically turned back into wood, then started to actually become smaller and smaller, greenish, smaller again, all the way until it looked like it was just a piece of a small marble of wood. Basically, how it started before, on the tree before becoming a branch. And one other thing that they saw, basically, is that everything in the room was basically turning back. Slowly, 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 but constantly going back. A plant in the side of the room was basically passing from maturity back to going into a seed. In minutes, he was doing that. While this plant basically took about a year to grow that size. Everything in the room that was basically new or that were made not long before that, previous to a year, are basically turning back into what they were before being transformed into those or made into those. He stopped using that, and basically everything stayed like that. Everyone outside of the room were amazed that he now has he can use his quirk from a distance. They ask him if he can actually turn everything back to where they were. So he tries to do the exact same thing but fast forwarding, and he goes a bit too far. Problem is, the plants do grow back, but everything else basically isn't, the material anymore. Well, the object, it's the material. So when he's just making those things age, they're aging, but they're not turning back into what they were. So they basically get that, okay, rewinding something can turn it back to what it was before it was made, but advancing back time will leave them how they are because, they're not actually part of that anymore, kind of. So, they don't want to try on another living being because, they're scared of what could happen. So they basically tell him to not use that ability, which he accepts and goes back to school. Then we go back to the moment where it is basically the teachers asking what everyone wanted to do, then drawing the paper saying you all want to be a hero, you all want to be heroes, blah blah blah, until the cruise leaves and pass by the same tunnel as he went and gets attacked by the sludge villain. The moment that happens, basically, Deku just quickly think of just stopping the villain, which he knows he can actually stop time, but normally he needs to keep touching it. So he basically touched the sludge villain and stopped time around it. For it. All Might arrived and basically just saw Deku holding on to the sludge villain and it being completely frozen there. All Might being impressed that the kid was able to do that, then he told the Deku to move out of the way because he was going to knock him out before taking him to the police, which Deku moved out. The sludge villain got back, um, started advancing in time again, and then All Might blasted him, put him in a bottle, and then asked Deku what his quirk was. Which, basically, after the incident where he basically died, they started calling it Time Reaper because it's literally that at this point. His ability made him kind of immortal since he doesn't age, and he can literally take time from people, so the Time Reaper for his quirk, which he basically tells it and explains that he can rewind, fast forward, advance, slow down, or stop completely anything that he touches, and that in the last year he's been practicing to only do it to a certain piece of something, like an injury or stuff like that, instead of doing it to the entire person, which All Might hears that and basically asks him how far he can rewind stuff, and Deku tells him that it depends on, how long he has time for, which All Might basically decide to tell him that he is the real All Might and buffs down, basically making sure that nobody else is seeing that. Then he shows Deku the injury and explains to him what happened, and asks Deku if he could actually rewind that. Which Deku is intrigued by the injury because, it was literally made to the number one hero, so the person who did that must have been strong. So he decides to take a try, and All Might feels all of the. Deku's basically not just taking the injury and just automatically placing it to before it got injured. Since he still has trouble with that, he needs to rewind it. All Might is feeling all of the pain from it while it's going back, which Deku tells him that, yeah, it's going to hurt a lot when he's going to arrive to the moment where the injury actually occurred, which All Might basically is prepared. When he arrives to that moment, he's almost screaming, but holds himself until Deku is finished. Deku rewinded All Might's entire body for that because All Might asked him to do so. So All Might is basically back in his prime, full strength, and one for all at full power, without any injury. Then he asks Deku how long he has before the injury comes back, and Deku tells him, "Oh, no. Once your body is turned back, even if I started accelerating your time again, your body doesn't have the injury. It's not just going to get it back. You would need to get injured once again to get it." Which All Might is impressed by the power that the kid has, mostly because of how it actually works. He tells the kid thank you and decides to leave, basically now able to go back to hero mode for as long as he wants. And he's back in his prime, so a lot more powerful. All Might asked him to keep the secret of his true form, as well as the injury, from anyone, so he doesn't say it to anyone. When when he arrives home, his mom asks him where he was, and he just says that he saw All Might and got his autograph, which he is happy to hear that he wasn't in trouble or getting into trouble. So after that moment comes the 10 months of training, and basically all he does is train his own body as well as training his quirk. But now, something that I did in the original was actually, well, this deku basically is, doesn't really have any emotions normally, which the less emotion he has, the more his power is strong and the more in control he gets with his power. And the first thing I found to how that would work is actually to kill Inko, which he will not become a villain because of that, but it's only because of the way it's going to happen. So, the way it happens is that in the middle of the 10 months of training, Inko happened to receive a letter from a friend basically telling her that she was able to invite one person to go on a party trip for 3 days for her job, and she chose Inko. Inko accepted, basically told Deku that he was going to be alone for the next 3 days, and left for it. After 4 days, Inko is not back home. He's just thinking, oh, she decided to stay with her friend for last day because she's not picking up the phone. But on the 5th day, he receives a call telling him that where his mother was actually got attacked and that she was stabbed. But the problem was that the stab normally would not have been fatal, but it was, the blade seemed to have been placed in an extremely strong poison, and she died from it. They are sorry about that, and, basically Deku is heartbroken for many reasons, like, his quirk could have saved her if he was with her. And he thought that he was going to be okay. And if he would have known the day before, he would have been able to at least try to help her. Because he doesn't know yet that he can actually rewind things that are dead. He will find out later, basically. Well, he knows that plant he can rewind them, but he doesn't know about animals, insects, and stuff like that. So that's kind of hard. Which he decides that he's still going to go to UA, but something happens in him that basically he stops going to school, and all he's training for is basically in rewinding. He's basically trying to rewind stuff to a point of rewinding reality itself, which his quirk cannot really do, but he's basically trying to increase his rewind ability the most as he can for the next 5 months. He still is able to actually go to UA entrance exam, but I'm going to end it here. So, a recap of his abilities. Deku's body stopped aging at age 14 because of an incident that basically made him well, that should have killed him, but his quirk basically stopped his time in a specific moment. And whatever happens to him after that, his body basically rewinds automatically to that. He can still increase his strength and his quirk for some reason, but anything else basically doesn't do anything. Like, his body doesn't age, but his hair does, his nail. Um, he can still gain muscle, but injuries and other stuff like that don't really happen to him. So basically he trained after that incident more in his time abilities because, well, for some reason after almost dying they basically improved a lot. So now he can basically make a zone around him that's in that zone. If he decides to accelerate time or slow it down, everything in the zone basically does it and at the exact same time. Um, if he touches something, he can basically or rewind it or make it skip to go back to a previous moment. He can slow down the time of something, stop it completely, making accelerate, um, or literally just skip forward in time for someone. So those are basically all of the abilities he has for now, because yes, there are some things that he will find out about his quirk later. So yeah, right now he basically passed through depression because he lost his mom. So yeah, hope you liked it. Sorry if the ending was kind of sad, but yeah. Hope this time the sound is a lot better because I don't want to um, remake it for a third time. Mostly that the first time was like at the start of my channel, so it was kind of normal that I had bad sound, but it was hard to comprehend, so yeah. Natsu, out.